Hello, folks.
Hello, ma'am. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you guys? You all? So today I have a simple plan. I have a choice for you, in fact. First is we do what we had planned not last week, 2 weeks from today, which was have discussions in small groups. So we would divide in like 6 groups, and we won't stay in class all that time. You would stay in class only for half an hour for the time that your group is with me. So I will be with each small group. Um, so we would discuss some of the points from last time, especially what is in class forum. And the idea is that you have a bit more material to then go participate in the class forum, because it's something it's worth 15% for your class. So it's a lot, and we want to kind of spend time on it. So that's the first option. So to revise and summarize, we'll make 6 groups, and each group will stay with me for half an hour, and rest of the time you could work on your own on glossary, on the forum, on class forum, and revising any other material that we covered in class. That's the first option. And the second option is to watch the film that we talked about last time, 270 Years of Resistance, Kanashitake 270 Years of Resistance. So this is the indigenous struggles. It's actually it's shot on the spot. It's a documentary, so it's not reconstructed like Walkout. It's shot when the struggle was happening. This was a siege. It was close to 80-day siege, and the military had blocked them. I think if you don't want to watch the film now, I can post it and you can watch on your own. It's on YouTube, so I think either way, it's a good deal. I want to know more like what you are interested in, what people are interested in.
Well, in my opinion, I feel like watching the film together would be better. Then we can later discuss it in class.
Okay.
So we can, yeah.
Sorry, continue.
Yeah, so that's basically my whole point. Like, I feel if we watch the movie now, we could get it over with and discuss it in class right away, and then we can discuss it maybe later with our terms and definitions. It could help us with the glossary later on.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'll make a quick poll, and you folks can respond, and that way you will also see. No, because when we have the exam, you'll probably have a similar kind of poll. So give me a moment. I see that that folks said something in the chat, but it might be simpler if you respond here. I'll give you like maximum 5 minutes to do that. Let's not take too much time. It's one question. You have to press one button. So I'll either wait for time or for you folks to all answer. All right, I'm going to share this with you. I think it would be interesting for you to see. So far 23 people responded and 20 say film. 3 small discussion. So looks like I'll give another bit more time, but what I'm calculating is there's 5 more people who didn't answer. So even if they say small discussion and if you go with majority, it's still film that is winning.
Where do we look for this?
I've posted the link in chat. You didn't see it?
I didn't see it until now. My bad.
Yeah, I'll post again because there's some other new people who joined. So this is a quick poll to see. I like to give you choice, you know. Choice is always important. Then you can make your own decision. So the choice is between watching a film on indigenous struggles on Kanashtake, something we talked about last class, or having small discussions. So you'll be only in class for half an hour and you would do, for the rest of the class, you would do work on your own. Okay, so everybody responded then. All right, so it's 27-3 the result. So let's go with the film. A few things I want to say is that it's fairly intense. There are times where you see police brutality, and it could be intense. I'm just like warning you. And second, last class we watched a talk. There was like a panel discussion with Ellen Gabriel and Jessica Kidwana. So Ellen Gabriel at that time, so this is from 1990, and she was the spokesperson at that point of the Kanashtake community. So you see her. She's young, and they talk about her like she's, you know, they say like Ellen Gabriel is there and all. So you can just note, and she's somebody who's continued to struggle throughout these years. So it's a very inspiring person. So what I will do, give me a moment. So I'm going to share the film and we'll watch it. Take notes. And the notes that I would like you to take, that I'm going to show you. Remember last time we did we looked at the critical thinking framework, and you listed some relevant questions on racism. Folks, remember that? So I'm going to put up that sheet again. And what I'm expecting you to do is make a list of questions for yourself. We can also have a discussion together that you're gonna keep in mind as we watch the film, and see if you can take notes under that. These things are important because then it's covered in exam, right? So I want you to take notes.
Sorry, what's the film called?
The film?
Yeah, what's it called?
It's called Kanashtake, 270 Years of Resistance. I will share it. But before we do, I want you to focus on this. So we saw this critical thinking framework last time. What I want us to do is brainstorm questions that are like, you know, under each of these sections. So we looked at it last time. We saw indigenous struggles. You know, there's problems around land rights. Their land is basically taken from them. So what you want to think about there in terms of indigenous rights is who wants to make, there are examples here. There could be other questions than what is here, but in who, do you have any ideas, any, do you have a pick from here of what could be those questions?
So for who is most directly affected is the indigenous people who are being oppressed
Sorry.
by the police.
Sorry, say it again.
I
Raise your
would-
hand before, just so because I can't see when I'm sharing the screen. I don't even see who's speaking. If you raise your hand, the Zoom moves you to the top of the screen. Yes, Hatim.
Yeah, so basically, I was saying that for whom it affects, it's the indigenous people from being persecuted by the police and being beaten and oppressed.
Yeah. So who's benefiting from this? So we might want to write it down, right? These questions. I want you to write it in your notebooks because as you watch it, you won't have access to much on the screen. So I want you to then keep in mind these questions. So who is benefiting from this situation? Is that what you said, Hatim? Or I didn't get it right?
No, what I said is who is most directly affected, and it's the indigenous people from.
Okay, it's fine. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's what I said.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So keep only the question in mind because you'll have lots of answers in the film. So who's directly affected? Who's most directly affected? That's the question you said. And also just think about who else is there. Think about the who in terms of people in the film, like people, personalities, entities. Like the police is an entity, right? The police and there's army also in the film. So think about all who's. Those two are already good questions to start with. All right. So what about what questions? Any ideas on what that you want to keep in mind? As you know, this could be in anything, but we know that there is indigenous struggle. We know that they have kind of got the short end of the stick. So what is it you want to understand in the situation? Anyone? You have the example, they have the questions in front, if not anything else. One main thing I would say is like, what is causing this? Like, what are the causes? It's something that you will be able to like understand. Let's do one by one. Okay, we are doing like, we are at what now? You see my screen, right? So let's be systematic about this. So we'll finish what and we'll get to why. So keep your, it's good Rania you shared, but let's come back to it. So we could say, what are the causes? Also, you could just think about what is happening, you know, like what are different things that are happening, because you'll see that there is a lot of things going on, right? It's a fairly intense film. I mean, intense siege. All right. And where? Anybody wants to bring any where questions? Anybody want to just read out what's there, and then we'll see if there's something that is interesting, because like, or another thing I can do is we watch the film for about half an hour, we take a pause, and then we come back to this. Maybe that way you will have more ideas. But the main point here that I'm trying to tell you is that you have to keep questions in mind. You have to take notes on those questions in terms of who is involved, what is happening, like, what are the strengths and weaknesses, what is another perspective, and then in terms of where, like, where is this happening, what are different where is this happening, and Where else is this happening? Is it happening elsewhere also? We could do it after as well, but it'll be easier for you to take notes. Keep these in mind and take notes. And also what you want is like different wheres, different locations. Because a lot of these locations might be new to you. And then think about when, just in terms of dates and like also like the duration, see like how much time has passed between one activity and the other. So, and then there's why. Rania already had the why question. Why have you allowed this to happen? That's a very good question, Rania. So we already have that. What about, can people think of other questions, or like can from the list, can you think of picking one or two? Anyone? Can you hear me? Are people hearing me? You are? Okay. What are the why questions here? So I'm going to say it now, but we can come back. Okay, if people are okay to take a break around half hour, we'll see a good time to break. I think it would be good to stop and like brainstorm a few more questions to keep in mind, and then go back and film. What I would say here is, in addition to what Rania posted, is why is this a problem? Like, why do we even have this problem? And then last question here is how? Anybody wants to try out a how question here? Yeah, so I'm getting direct messages. So how should we solve it? Yes, that's a very good question. How can we change this for our good? Yeah, for our good and for everybody's good, yeah. And for good. How will we approach this safely? And also, how are they carrying this out? How you can think about it both on the side of indigenous peoples, the Mohawks, and also on the side of like police and army. Like if you were to read the synopsis of the film, it basically what it says is Kanashtake is an indigenous community, what they call we'll see in the film like how they are in that specific area. So it's indigenous land. The whole of Canada and United States was indigenous land, right? And this particular part was like what they were given. It's like, okay, there's no you don't have any danger from us. This is your land. And then so this is in Oka. It's at the edge of Montreal on the North Shore. So almost like northwest of Montreal. And there's a golf course there, and they were expanding from 9-hole golf course to 18-hole golf course, and they were taking indigenous land to do it. And the land that they wanted to take was the burial ground, so like sacred ground. And I think I'm not sure if it says in the film or not, but they were expanding the golf course and they wanted a parking lot, so they wanted to make parking lot in the indigenous land, which is like, anyway, it's just ridiculous, the whole idea that they would take more land, steal more land to have a parking lot for a golf course that they are expanding. Anyhow, so that's the basic idea, and then you'll see that they are protesting it. They are saying that no, you can't take our land, and that's how it starts. Do people have any other questions before we go forward? Anything else to keep in mind? All right, so I suggest keep these questions like in your notebook, and in the end we'll come back and discuss. Like Hatim said also, it is a good idea to watch film in class here and we can discuss. All right, so I'm going to stop here and I will share the film with you. It's 2 hours. I don't know if I already said it. And perhaps we'll take a break at 1 hour mark, and then we can also see if there are any more questions that we need to put together. So like I said, it's a film from 1990. It was released soon after, and then it was made public, available publicly later on. And I'm going to post the film after we watch it.
Miss, could you write the name of the film in chat, please?
Yeah, if you have trouble watching here and you want to watch like on your own screen, that's totally fine. But what is important is that you watch it and then you take the break when I'm taking the break. All right, so I'm going to share it. Yeah, just confirm. Can somebody confirm? Hold on. I think people watch the film. Yeah. Maybe we can go over the questions we had just to start with. Like, who was involved? Rania, you want to speak? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just feel like the movie showed how unfair the system was back then and still is till this day. How can a population or a group cannot even have control on their own land or their territory, and how important that land is for them? Like, as much as, let's say, like a Montreal person who, yeah, Montreal is important for you, then if something happened to it, you're going to protect it. That's the same thing they did, but since they're indigenous, they were not treated the same way as someone else would have done the same thing. But we see this type of situation all across the world when smaller group trying to protect their own territory, like against a bigger group and more strong group with like guns and everything.
Yeah, exactly. So here what we can think of is that there were power relations, right? There's the people who have more power were able to basically impose their will and be unfair, be unjust. So it's not necessarily, I mean, in this case, it's also about majority, right? The majority settlers who were acting this way with the indigenous people. But it's not only about majority. It's the distinction is between not majority minority, but those who are at the center, those who have power, versus those who are on the margins, those who's been marginalized. So yes, thank you, Rania. Any other initial reflections before we go to specific questions? Nobody else? All right, so let's go with the questions. Do people want to look at the critical thinking sheet to pick the questions to answer, or you have your own questions in terms of who? Yes, Sophia.
I was gonna say that we could access it like on our own, so
Okay.
I think it's okay. And also, most of the questions are like who, what, where, when, why, and how, right?
Yeah, that's the initial questions. Yeah, that's a section. So we can just you can simply use that and come up with those questions. Or if you need, you can use it for reference. But the question is, who wants to speak? Like, do you have, or you can start off. We can start off with who. So who was involved? The questions around who. Perhaps start with the question, like the frame a question and then answer. Who was involved? Who was benefiting? Who was being hurt? Yes, Hatim.
So for the question who was involved, it was one side, two sides, the Mohawk people, and then the Québécois, or that's more generalization, but yeah, the Québécois, the people who infringed the rights of the Mohawks.
Okay, so the first one is good. You're talking about Mohawks. The second one.
Yeah, it was
saying,
a generalization. Like, yeah, it's not. I know there's a specific word, but I'm blanking on it.
That's good. We'll just try to break it up. Like who were the entities? Who were the people we are talking about? So when we are talking about in general Québécois, there were some people in Kahnawake who were against the indigenous people, right? Who were throwing rocks. Remember the lady who picked up this big rock, saying that my dad got hit by this rock. I think he even had a heart attack. So there was this riot. So there were some people who were against the indigenous people, but there were some who were in favor also. So there were both demonstration in favor of as well as against indigenous people. So it's good to distinguish, like, you know, so who in the people. So we're talking about who, that's good, but who is doing what? There was also who else is involved here from Quebec? I mean, like within the Quebec area, Quebec territory, who else was involved? Yes, Sophia.
There were journalists and news reporters also who were taking pictures and documenting everything that was going on.
Yeah, okay. I'm taking some notes and I'm going to share it after. Who else? Yes, Catherine. I can't hear you. You have to unmute.
The government, the mayors, the prime minister.
Yes, yeah. So there was the mayor of Oka municipality. There was the premier minister, so which was like premier, Quebec premier. Who was Quebec premier? Do people remember?
Bourassa.
Robert Bourassa, yeah. So those were entities from Quebec. So that's good. That you got us like, you know, you gave us a good lead, Hatim. And then who else? Who else was involved? Chateauguay people also participated. Yes, yeah. So I'm going to note that. So we talked about the demonstration, but yeah. So they were from Chateauguay. Who else? There were some other people, right?
There were people outside from Quebec that joined. Some from Vancouver, some from the States.
Is it Hatim who's speaking?
Yes. Sorry for not raising hand.
Yeah, no, it's okay. So yes, there were people from outside of Quebec. from elsewhere in Canada and from Mexico. Who else? Any people, any specific people? I'm like waiting for 2 names and then we'll finish the who part.
What this is saying then is
There's someone raised hand, Gabriel?
that just
Is it Ellen Gabriel?
no.
There was Ellen Gabriel, yes,
Yeah.
yeah. She was the spokesperson, right? We saw her throughout the film.
Grow and shape this body of yours. That
Were you saying something more, Gabriel?
No, I was just wondering if that was the person you were looking for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was looking for that person.
Cool.
Because she's one of the protagonists, right? And then there was Joseph. So Amy said there was Joseph.
that doesn't mean to say
Um,
that you
I can't remember full name of Joseph, but he was a Mohawk from 18th century or late 19th, early 19th, from 1867. Mohawk from 19th century. And then there's Mayor Willett. Yeah, so we talked about the mayor of Oka. I'm going to put the name. Okay, I think we are kind of almost there. I'm going to share the screen, but I will do it momentarily and we'll continue this discussion after. So I just put the list here. So to start with, somebody said Mohawks, right? So the indigenous peoples and Mohawks. The Mohawks were, we'll see where, but they were both in Kaneshitaki as well as in Kahanawake. Ellen Gabriel, Joseph, Oka Mayor, and then there are different levels of government involved, right? So we have Prime Minister Mulroney. This is what you folks hadn't talked about. So there was the Canadian Prime Minister Brian Mulroney. He was there, and there was Premier Robert Bourassa from Quebec. There was also SQ. We didn't talk about it, but that's also a who, right? Who was there? Who was involved? So there was SQ, and there was military, so army. That is also important there. Who was in? I mean, it adds to the power relations, like the amount of upper hand they got in the situation. And there were Oka residents who marched against the protest, but there were some in favor. Okay, so somebody is writing there was police. Yes, there was police. The police that they had was SQ, because police like what we have in Montreal, like SPVM, is at city level. When you go outside, when you don't have like urban area with enough density, it's the SQ. So SQ is actually bigger. It's almost like a Quebec army. SQ is Sûreté de Québec. So they were there from the beginning. It was them who were there. So I will just say Sûreté de Québec, which was police. And then, so we talked about Oka residents, Chateauguay residents, Scammy who brought up. Also, we talked about Six Nations Iroquois Confederacy. So this is also like different nations. So I have put it here. So the idea here is that Mohawks were part of Iroquois Confederacy. So it's when you talk about different states composing a country, it's the same thing. So they belong to Iroquois Confederacy. So I put it there. I think it was Sophie who talked about journalists and reporters, and they were when the effigy when they burnt a Mohawk effigy near Mercier Bridge. It was very unfortunate, but they were basically calling them savages, and I think it's just important to note that this is what was happening. So I put it in quotes here. And somebody mentioned about people from Mexico and elsewhere in Canada who came to support and be in solidarity. So that's good. I'm going to stop the screen share here. So we have the who. So in terms of what I wrote here is this: who is this harming? Who is this benefiting? So and we can also think about who's in solidarity there. All right. So next, let's move on to the next question, which is what? Can you think of what questions and answers to them? The questions I'm thinking about are like, what are the issues? What is happening? You know, just in terms of descriptive. What is usually a descriptive question? Who wants to say what was happening? What was going on? What did you see? Anyone? Go ahead, Hatim.
Well, for what was happening was that the police, the SQ, was infringing on the rights of the indigenous people for the Mohawks, and they were resorting to violence, and they were beating them. They were sending them to prison, to jail. That's
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we could say that army showing of force, brutality. All right. What else? They want Mohawks to move out. Yes. Yeah. So they were basically pushing Mohawks out. I'm seeing if I already have it written. I'm going to write it. Anybody else? Okay, I'm seeing some comments in chat. Jason, did you want to speak? Yeah. Yeah, totally. Then I see something in chat. Amy wrote showdown between Mohawks and Quebec people. Yeah, so there was this power struggle there, right? That's great. Anything else? Anybody else? In terms of what was happening, what are the issues? Anything that is descriptive? All right. We'll it's 10 to 9, so I'm just going to share the screen and then we'll go over the list. So I actually have so I also put some quotes just to kind of describe. Generally, it's good to have quotes to give a feeling of what exactly happened. So we did talk about, so I'm going to note army brutality in a minute, okay? I'm looking at the chat here. So here it says that there was this one quote which was fairly honest coming from a government guy. He says, these people have lost their land without any consultation and compensation, which I consider unjust. And this goes on, and after that he says, like, and you're doing this for a golf course. And this was the written document. And then there was this, I think it was the young girl who was saying, our rights, this is our territory. So that it just gives a flavor of like what was happening. And then this I already said earlier, but like protests were both by supporters of indigenous people, but also those who were against their resistance. I'm going to share this after this PowerPoint. And then army moved in, took over the town. We can say here that there was army brutality that Amy said. And we see this throughout the film, right? This brutality. Roads were blocked. Food couldn't go in. I wrote come in as if I was all inside the siege. And we also saw like clothes. They couldn't get the clothes in. And then overall showing a force of army, and at some point they talk about police state. Anybody notice that? Did anybody note what they were saying about police state and what does it mean? This is a good term to do for glossary. There's lots of terms here that we can use for the glossary if anybody is interested. So police state basically means that people don't have rights. It's police who runs the show, and which it also means that the state, the elected officials, they coordinate with police, and that's it, and nobody else has rights. Remember when the journalist, the last journalist, I think it was Globe and Mail journalist who was leaving, he said that there is no CBC in there is no broadcast journalist inside, and he said that in a country like Canada, like it's unbelievable that it's the military, it's army that is telling us what to report and what not to report. So that's an example of police state. And then there was brutal assaults in Kahnawake. Army invaded the Pines. Then Mohawks were being pushed out. This I just started. Somebody had mentioned it. And also. The Longhouse of Kahnawake Reserve was breached by army, so there was an army raid. So this is Kahnawake. People are comfortable with this distinction between Kanashtake and Kahnawake. We can look at a map quickly if anybody needs. Kahnawake is a reserve that is near Chateauguay. Camille had talked about Chateauguay earlier. So it's a reserve. Reserve means that people were moved and they were put in a reserve. So Mohawks, some were pushed in their in their hunting grounds, which was Kanashtake. And then these folks, they were like all taken and put in a reserve, and that was Kahnawake. So Kahnawake was by a bridge, Mercier Bridge. In fact, I think it would be just simpler if you look at the, give me a moment. It was there in the film, but I think we should just check it out quickly. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen for now, and I'll share the map. So here, it's interesting that that Google Maps, it actually gives information about Kanashtake lands. So here we see, oh, sorry, can I? I'm going to leave it so you see so you see here Kanashtake that is marked on the map. I mean, it's not necessarily Google because people can go and add markers. So you see the Kanashtake lands here, which we saw in the film. And then if we So you see the Montreal map here, right? And we see Kanashtake is here. And Kahnawake, I don't know if people see it's written here, Kahnawake. And there is this bridge, that was a Mercier Bridge that was connecting to the island of Montreal. So people see Kahnawake. So that's the difference. And it's just important to kind of keep it in mind what we're talking about. Any questions here, or it's fairly clear? It was shown in the film, but it was very quick, and I don't know if you remembered it throughout the film. Okay, I'm going to stop here, and I will share the PowerPoint. So we might take another 10 minutes, okay? All right, so what I was saying here was the Kahnawake Reserve was also breached by the army. And then SQ boats was patrolling. So they were even patrolling the water. And at some point they did put even the barbed wire in water, the razor wire in water. And then initially there were 2 army checkpoints. People were beaten up by police and army. We talked about brutality. And Mohawks were not allowed to speak to lawyers. I will share the PowerPoint. I will put the PowerPoint on Leia. So I just want us to discuss it, and then I'll put it all on Leia. So they were not allowed to speak to lawyer. This is infringement of fundamental human rights, and international agreements. And then there was a peace camp by the supporters. What was funny, I thought, was that they were complaining about eggs. No, they are throwing eggs at us. How many eggs, I don't know, but they're throwing eggs at us. But these guys, they were actually throwing flares, and people got injured. And they were just throwing flares at night. So it was just really bizarre, their comparison. And then we talked about the showdown. And then there was a 78-day siege. So overall, I mean, this is I put it at the end because it's only in the end that we learned that they were there for 78 days. So I put it in the end. So Camille is saying that you went to Kahnawake, and so yeah, the thing is, because it's a reserve, it has specific requirements. There's also like there is restrictions in terms of like what can go in. Also, there are certain things in the reserves that don't have taxes, because actually they are supposed to be on their own land and they shouldn't have to pay taxes. So that's why you have to because you are not somebody who's living on the reserve, they have to get the permit. But the analogy here, I think somebody mentioned earlier, the analogy here is not necessarily that much that island of Montreal, but think about it as your house. No, like if you're in your house, somebody is coming in, it's kind of normal that you have to ask for permit, right? But generally we don't do that. But because they are in a reserve and it has like fixed boundaries, so then it's regulated, and it's not necessarily them who regulate, it's the Indian law, which is the in Canadian, it's at the federal level that regulates the reserves. Thanks for sharing, Cami. All right, so that was the what. I'm going to stop. The rest should be fairly quick. When people remember the dates, like what was happening since what date, what is the key date here?
1990.
Yes, Hatim.
Sorry, would you wanted me to answer it? Yeah, 1990. Sorry.
Okay, were you continuing? No?
You said the key date, so I said 1990. Okay, sorry, yeah. I thought you were asking a question.
I'm saying, are you continuing? Are you saying something more?
No.
Because, okay. So yes, 1990, but do you remember dates? Like, specific dates? So Cami is saying July 11th, 1990, exactly. That was the day when the siege started. And when they are commemorating the anniversary of the siege, it is indeed on July 11th that they commemorate. And this year was the 40th year. No, sorry, not this year. Last year was the 40th year. And we had an event at Vanier with Ellen Gabriel to commemorate that. We don't have a recording. It wasn't recorded, but she did come, and she spoke on the occasion of 40th anniversary of the siege. Okay, so the rest of the dates, I've noted a number of dates, but it's basically different landmarks, and there was a shootout that was in 18th September, and then on 21st September they came out. And then 2 years after they were acquitted. So all those who were arrested in July 1992, they were released. And then this film came out in 93. All right, where was this happening? What were we just talked about it, but I just want to like make sure that you understand and remember because it's important. What were the name places that we saw in terms of where? Well, there is Kanashtake, there is Kahnawake, there's Oka. Oka is the municipality around Kanashtake, and there was a Mercier Bridge which was blocked. Do people have why answers? Like, why was this happening? I think there were other questions that were asked before we start. Like, why is this a problem? Why have you allowed this to happen? Anybody has any answers to that? No? Nobody?
Hello?
Yes, Zach, I didn't see. Yeah, when you clap, it doesn't move you to front.
Okay.
You can't raise your hand, as in...
I didn't see it, but...
Okay, no worries, go ahead.
Anyway, it was like originally because they want to expand the parking lot of the Oka golf course.
Yes, yeah. Anybody else? All right, I'm going to share the screen. So I have a bunch of things here, including what Zach said. Can you see it? Can you see the screen? It's working, okay. So, so it depends how you look at it, but if you look at it from the indigenous side, they were protecting their lands. So their the pines and the burial ground from the expansion of golf course, which was expanding from 9 to 18 holes. And the indigenous people, like in terms of like, why they were resisting because they wanted recognition. And at some point, Ellen Gabriel says that not just as Mohawks, but as first peoples of the land. So overall, they were defending their land, their rights, and their human rights. And what was why was SQ and army so aggressive? It was basically to kill the resistance. They didn't want people to rise up. That's the idea here, because so much SQ first, and then army. You saw like so much army, and it was like 155 million that they spent on this whole thing. So it wasn't just because they wanted that land for the expansion of golf course. That was not the reason. The main reason was they didn't want indigenous people to rise up, and they actually wanted to give this as an example that so that like other indigenous people in other places in Canada also don't resist, also don't ask for land rights. So they were basically setting an example. And then yeah, which talked about Kanashtaki fighting for the land rights. And then at some point there's this quote that says, I think there is this other young girl. She says, "We didn't ask anything, and that was yours. You came and you took you took it, which was what was ours." So so that was like one of the reasons why they were fighting. And I think I have something here. How did they do it? So here I'm talking about more the government and all. How they were trying to kill the resistance. Well, one, there was this flares that was producing fear and agitation. So there was the actual army, and I would maybe put this first. So there was actual brutality, presence and brutality of police, so SQ and army. And then there was this whole, the how they were basically intimidating in various ways. So flares that were producing fear and agitation, and overall power dynamics, like they were just showing off power. We talked about this earlier. And then here I've put separately like how, so I did have this here, so I'm going to put, so I have done it twice here. I've been taking notes as we watched. So the other things they did then is basically the divide and rule, which is like a long, like old tactic. This is what has happened, right? Like, they put Kanawake in one reserve, Kanashtaki, which is, they're all Mohawks, but they're in another village. And overall, the indigenous people were very much like, spread out. Remember, I think in the end, a few times they said, like, no, we got together, the indigenous people kind of got together, we united, and that's one big victory for us. So they basically went kind of, this movement allowed them to kind of break this divide and rule spell. And then there was this emergency zone created, which here emergency means, this is a technical term, emergency. If anybody wants to, you can define it in the glossary. So here what it means, emergency is when a state declares emergency, it means that it's emergency, so all your rights are suspended, and we do what we need to do in order to kind of maintain law and order. So there are states. Once there was in India, there was an emergency called, and like many people were locked up, jailed, because they thought that there was like a civil unrest. So that usually when they think there's a civil unrest and they're not able to handle situation as usual, then they call an emergency rule. But here they were calling it emergency zone. So like there was this zone where they could basically do whatever they want. So army could do whatever they wanted. So I would maybe like put this here in quotes. Otherwise, like emergency may sound something else. Yeah, and then I talked about power relations. We talked about it earlier. So when I say power dynamics, this is what it means. The dynamics, like the relationship that was there, which was injustice towards people in the margin. I think somebody had mentioned this and I added it here. And then the last slide here is continuing with like how did, like in terms of indigenous people, how did they do it? And how can we change the situation? Or like how can things improve? So here, the one main thing is resistance, like, resisting, them resisting and insisting on protecting the pines and remaining where they were, like holding on to their ground, was resistance. And that resistance was powerful. It gave them power, and it showed other people, showed the state that they have power, they have say, and they should be listened to. Struggle, I don't know if people understand the term struggle in the movement context. Anybody can understand, like, do you have an idea what it means when we say struggle? Oftentimes we say indigenous struggles, or racialized people's struggles. What it means is this process where you go through difficulties. You might face opposition, you might face a failure. Like, it's not always a hunky-dory, but you're continuing, you're struggling through it, but maintaining your momentum and maintaining your demands. That's the struggle, especially like when it's around justice and against unfairness. I wrote solidarity here. Solidarity here was important, and that's what they were saying, that we brought together people, like united different nations, different indigenous people. That's a form of solidarity when people were coming all over the country. Like, many people came from within Canada, and some came from Mexico, and I think there were some from US as well. So they were all showing solidarity. Who wants to describe solidarity? That's a really good term also for glossary. Anybody wants to describe solidarity? I know it's getting late. I see some messages in chat. So a couple of people are saying same thing, unity. It's unity, but it's more than unity. What it means is you might not be together, right? You might not be physically together, but you are supporting, and you're supporting in ways that are concrete, that are symbolic, or like, you're doing everything that is needed to be done. So the example here, there was one clear example of solidarity. Who wants to say it? This was the prominent thing in the film. There were acts of solidarity. Why was Mercier Bridge blocked? Was something happening on Mercier Bridge? When these guys in Kanashtake, they blocked the road, they were saying like it was just a dirt road that they were blocking, but they were basically saying like, you can't come in and destroy the pines and expand your golf course. So they were just blocking that part. That's the only thing they did in the beginning, and then rescue moved in because they were blocking that dirt road. So Kahnawake, on their end, they said, we want to support, and also obviously they are fighting for their own land as well, but it was in support and solidarity with Kanashtake that they blocked Mercier Bridge. That was the strongest act of solidarity in the film. And then there were other people when they were coming from elsewhere, it was also solidarity. Coming from elsewhere, like speaking, speaking in the media, like putting themselves out there, and maybe like risking also. So all of this is solidarity. The way you can distinguish support and solidarity is that support is more when you are like doing something that is like kind of pushing the cause, or if let's say you have a table that some people are holding a table and it's falling. I'm just giving table, it could be anything else. This is a quick example. If or like a table with 4 legs, so the 4 legs are the supports of the table. If you remove one leg, the table is going to fall. So if you are coming, so those folks who were coming and who were inside the siege with them, they were supporting them. So that's a direct support. But solidarity could be something else, but you're doing it in solidarity and it's still supporting, but in different ways. That's a distinction. And then last thing I just want to say, but it's a very important point. They said it in many ways, many people, is like, in order to continue the struggle, the resistance, they have to pass on their language and culture to their children. Otherwise, the children won't know of these struggles. Children won't know that there has been all this injustice, and they could be just pushed out. It's almost like if your child doesn't know that this is the house, and then somebody can come and say push them out and take the house, for example. Okay, so there's a question. So the way I have done here in the PowerPoint, it's just to get you used to thinking in this framework of like asking these different kinds of questions and not stopping at one question, not stopping at the description, not stopping at like what we are seeing, but going a bit more behind the scenes and seeing why, and then a bit more analyzing and saying how is this happening. So how is more the analysis? Why is more the investigation? And what is more the description? Right? So it's important to think about any issue from different angles, and that's what we are doing in our class, right? It's about social movement. So when we do it, we're gonna try to kind of develop this like multiple lens, if you want to call it that way. So this is how I'm doing it, and one important thing I want to say is that yes, you have exams. Yes, you will get grade out of like the exams you write. But I also want you to leave this class with like building competencies, building skills, building critical thinking capacity. These are competencies, and you'll be tested on it in the exam. But I would like you to not necessarily focus only of like how you're going to write the exam. Of course, exam is important, and your exam is multiple choice. So I'll probably ask questions like what was happening, and we'll do the revision before exam. So you'll see, you'll know like what questions to expect. Does it answer your question? It was in the chat, so I'm just taking in. Okay, that's good. All right. Any other like lingering questions before we? I'm going to post the slides, but any questions before we call it a night? Yes, Sophia.
For the glossary, what are you exactly looking for when it comes to the word? Because I just added some, but I'm not sure based off of what you wrote for others.
Okay, so I'm going to reply to everyone, each one. I'm approving all terms. So if it works, then I would just accept it. If not, I will leave you a comment. Depending on how it is, I will leave either a comment in the column, or I might like write under like in what Google Doc creates on the right side. But I will give you feedback. And once it's like you can fix the term, then you can do the definition. What am I looking for? I'm looking for terms that you wouldn't have known before starting the class. That's one example. So I'm not like somebody wrote, I don't know if in this class or some another class of mine, but wrote like poverty, for example. Like, no, I don't want you to write definition of poverty, because we already know the glossary is like when you have a book, well, let's say you have a report, you have like a 30-page report, and you're using a lot of terms in it. You describe it, but no, like it's not necessarily easy, these terms. So what you do is you put all these new, a bit more difficult terms in glossary. So that's what we are doing.
Okay, because I wrote things like morals and consent, but not everybody knows about that. So I'm like not too sure.
Okay, I mean, if you want, you and I can have a conversation, but I will also give feedback. So let me know, or you can join. You can meet me during the office hours, or you can stay back now. Okay.
So you can finish.
Okay. Any other questions before we close? No. All right. So I'm going to post readings for next class. So make sure you do the readings, and we'll have a more regular class next class, so it won't be watching film. And I will also post a question in class forum. So those are the two things, two homeworks. People often ask me what is the homework, so those will be the two things that you would be doing as homework. Okay. I'm staying here for a bit, so if you want, you can stay back and ask other questions, anything else, glossary or anything else. All right. Good then. So have a good night, and have a good rest of the week.
Have a good night, Miss.
Okay. Bye bye.